welcome back to Anti-King. I am excited about today's video, because today we get to talk about Tat Girl. Or I mean, I guess Feast 2 or whatever. Anyways, you're probably thinking to yourself, where's the video for the first feast? I can't seem to find it anywhere. That's because I'm not making it. While it may not be talked about or even remembered particularly fondly now, the first feast wasn't really slept on. It reviewed well within the horror community and was a word-of-mouth hit upon its release. Maybe that's just my personal experience, maybe you did sleep on Feast, but I don't want to do it. And honestly, the people that gave that first Feast 10s might not have made it through to the end of Feast 2, and might not have even heard of Feast 3, which I'll be covering next week. And it doesn't get much more slept on than that. There's a slight change to something more comedic, but the first one wasn't exactly serious either. Everything is ratcheted up just a bit here, and considering the already insane tone of the original, there was really only one way this could go. This movie is nasty and gory and downright reprehensible in the best way, and they embraced it. Feast 2 was released in 2008 and was written by Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton of Saw fame? What the fuck? And it was directed by John Gulager, who was the subject of the mid-2000s docuseries reality show thing, Project Greenlight, while shooting this movie's predecessor. He helms all three movies, and based off interviews I've seen, he is very proud of them. I love how this movie so deftly moves between creature feature, body horror, and gross out comedy. The most obvious example would be the dissection scene. What starts as the obvious investigating the creature trope from creature features quickly turns into body horror as a giant eye emerges from the creature's entrails and begins shrieking horrendously before being destroyed, causing an eruption of puke, and later, you guessed it, semen. Loads and loads of glorious semen. This video is getting flagged for sure. This is played for laughs, pretty ineffectively, honestly. The least funny parts of the Feast movies are, unfortunately, when they're trying their hardest to be funny. But anyways, genre-bending moments like this scene are commonplace throughout this movie, and say what you will about them, but the filmmakers really executed them well. The makeup team did an excellent job designing the practical versions of the creatures. You can tell the movie was made on a shoestring budget, but the shot selection and above-average makeup work really covers it up for the most part. The CGI creatures, however, are bad, and a lot of times unnecessarily so. A lot of times they're featured in shots they have no real purpose in. I understand that this was made in a fairly primitive, like CGI time, but couldn't you work around that by literally just not showing them? Instead, the movie seems to insert them everywhere. But honestly, I think it's kind of part of the charm, and another example of the movie just fully accepting exactly what it is. It's endearingly sloppy, like that college friend you've never let go of. The gore here should be the selling point, and in a lot of places, it is. The gradual decay of the grandma was stomach-churning, but unfortunately, a lot of these kills are kind of forgettable. And then once again, we have some pretty egregious uses of CGI here. Again, I get that they were on a tight budget, and desperate times call for desperate measures, but a lot of times it feels like they poured the whole budget into making the grandma look good, which they do. But I think if the budget had been spread out a little bit more evenly, we probably would have ended up with a good set of kills here. I mean, we do anyways. Gorehounds won't be disappointed or anything, but I can't help but feel it could have been more consistent. Feast 2 is also a quintessential slice of late 2000s culture. Between the crass, edgy humor and hyper-masculine cock rock lining the soundtrack, you can tell this movie was made specifically for 17-year-olds to high-five each other to. Luckily for the filmmakers, however, I was exactly that age when it came out, and it's stuck with me since. The movie is packed with gore and boobs and shitty, mean jokes, and I ate it up. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to talk about Tat Girl, aka Chelsea Richards. Except we're not going to, because she's a very minor character here. She has a few moments here and there, but for the most part, she's a compliment to Biker Queen's character. That being said though, this movie did come out when I was a teenager, and Chelsea Richards was one of my first celebrity crushes, so I will talk about her in Feast 3, which she's in a lot more of. Anyways, I rate these on tension, kills, plot, acting, sound design, oh, and direction. The tension is mostly non-existent, as that's not really what this movie aims to do. However, the moments where it does exist are pretty great, so I can't give it a 0. The kills are the draw in this kind of movie, and this one lives up to that. I had to dock at a point for the awful CG throughout, but I know that wasn't necessarily the filmmaker's fault. There is no plot. This movie is just meant to move from one slimy, gooey mess to the next. But hear me out. These characters are over the top and outright dumb. They're often overdone stereotypes and movie tropes, and I believe intentionally so. But all of this meta commentary on horror tropes requires a certain level of subtlety in these performances, and every actor kinda nails it. Alright, so I replaced the sound design category with comedy for the Feast movies because honestly, the sound design and score are just really bad, and I don't feel like talking about them. Anyway, the humor in Feast is pretty hit or miss. Some of the edgy humor aged pretty poorly, and other times the movie is just trying too hard. But some of the smaller interactions between characters, their reactions to things, there's a ton to find funny here. Given a shoestring budget, a no-name cast, and a bare-bones script centered mainly around sight gags and stunts and physicality, and turning that into a semi-coherent, funny, watchable movie is an accomplishment. Director John Gulager deserves a ton of credit for being able to make this work. I was surprised to see his work here not result in more opportunities. Although he did direct one of my favorite low-budget boob fest ever, Piranha 3 Double D. So 36 out of 60 equals 60%, which is a failing grade, which makes sense because this movie sucks. And I love it. It's not gonna make you think. It's not going to enrich your mind in any way. But it's fun. It's funny. It's worth the slightly longer than necessary runtime, I assure you. That's it for this episode. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and yeah, but all of those. And until next week, stay safe. Hey, editing me here. With some bad news. After trying to work out the kinks of how I'm gonna do Feast 3, I've decided I'm just not gonna do it, and then I'm not gonna do Creature either, just because they were kind of linked together. But Feast 3, Chelsea Richards is like naked throughout the entire thing, as is the other biker girl. And when she's not, there's like a monster with its dick out on screen, and when that's not on screen, there's like a head being exploded or a body torn apart or something. So unless I do the video with 5 minutes of my face, which would be pretty boring, there's just no real way to do Feast 3. That being said though, instead of doing Feast 3 tomorrow, I'm going to do Spare Parts on Wednesday. And then I'll still be doing Tusk on Friday. Alright, that's all. Bye.